The following is a Barrett Sports Media production. There are two sides to the broadcast industry: content creators and moneymakers. This podcast is for that second group: sellers, buyers, managers, anyone with an interest in business. You're all welcome here. This is Seller to Seller. Now, here's your host, Jeff Cabes.
All right, we've all sold endorsement deals for our on-air staff, or we should have at least by now. Personally, I was able to sell myself because I was on the air and in sales, and it really was the most powerful tool that I felt I had in my box. Well, I want you to get your hard hats on, because here comes the general contractor of endorsement selling, amongst other things. Let me introduce you to Mike Scott. Long career with iHeartMedia. Had stopovers in New Orleans, West Palm Beach as director of sales. Most recently, he was the Mid-South region president, and he covered Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Tennessee for the former Clear Channel and current iHeart, and a friend of mine, a Boise State fan, and lives in DFW. Your wife was selling. She's now retired. And so, Mike, I'm shocked you've even found time for me. How are you, sir?
Jeff, I'm awesome, man. How the hell are you?
I'm good, man. I mean, both of us are like guys that just love to talk about how to make this business easier for the people, to me, Mike, who really make it go. And that's the salespeople. And that's why I wanted to put this together. So let's start with your sales experience. And as a guy that was at iHeart as a regional president with all those states and all those markets and stations, I want you to address, do you think that sales should have been the first thing you did every day at the top of your list and then manage, or was it the other way around? And what do you think about that?
Great question. I should have started every day with a sales focus. I should have gone to lunch every day with a sales focus. As I was packing my desk up to go home, I should have been thinking about sales. And before I went to bed at night, I should have gotten on a knee and prayed for some sales things. The truth of the matter is, you can't spend too much time focused on sales. We've all know the joke about sales versus programming. And that has been one of the most detrimental things to our business that ever happened, because the most powerful salespeople are the people who put the product out, the content delivery team, the DJ, whatever we call them. Mm-hmm. That's the most powerful sales voice in every organization. And we kind of went to the opposite ends and pointed guns at each other. It was silly.
All right. So you said that's what you should have done.
Yes.
Right? That doesn't sound the way you were able to do your job when you're running all these states and the SEC, basically.
Of course. Yeah, exactly. A lot of Sunbelt too,
okay.
But yes, you're correct. I think the other thing too is, there's things that are required. Okay. What, maybe instead of what I said I should have done, is what would have been more productive might have been the better way to answer that question. I mean, the stuff part, it's got to get done. But one of the things I think I've learned would be, the stuff part doesn't have to be done when the light is shining, when it's time to go see a customer. Okay. So I think maybe the better way to have answered that would have been to simply say, I should have never used prime selling time for anything other than selling. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, for a salesperson, we know that we should be out of the office seeing people ideally from 10 to 3. Sometimes people will see you before and after those times, but it feels like, like a great midday show, a great midday salesperson is out on the road, right? And I don't know if you ever broke it down like that and looked at, well, how many hours should I be spending a day selling, or even heard it from the top down?
Yes. There's a lot, there didn't used to be, but there's an awful lot of great data today. I don't have it at my fingertips, but understanding, best times to find people, find prospects, the best ways to communicate. I mean, Jeff, when you and I started, you could walk into a business and find a decision maker, or you could make a phone call. Today, those tactics, while still available to us, there's a lot more layers. There's email, there's text, there's the social media sites, the LinkedIns of the world. So it's simpler to find decision-making processes, but it's not easier. In fact, it's a hell of a lot harder. All of that access has also allowed prospects to easily screen you. So, it's kind of the better the data, the better the access gets, the more layers of stay away from me gets. So being a great salesperson today has a different set of, the prospecting challenges. One, I'm probably not an expert on, but so, the technique itself, I'll leave to others. But there's some fundamental things that will never, ever change.
One thing about you, I know will never change. And since this is targeted at sports radio sellers, I think it's good to address we are very fortunate in that either we're selling local personalities or national personalities, depending upon how our stations are organized. And that's an asset. We're going to spend time talking about the endorsement sale and your passion for it. So give me that overview. And has this always been a thing for you, where you've always had a program per se for your sellers to say, get the on-air staff involved here?
When I was first a sales rep, one of the things I did is I did what I was told. So that if they'd say, we sell endorsements, I'd sell endorsements. But I didn't really understand why. And like all things, the data wasn't as good back then. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of, you'd kind of, put your thumb up and go, how's it working? Oh, it's working great. Or, oh, it's not working good at all. Now, you can track, and again, the data sets are huge. So we know, here's what we know, is that an endorser, an endorser used properly, which isn't difficult, but there are some rules to it, is one of the most powerful tools. It cuts through recessions. It cuts through all of the clutter. And I want to say this before we get too far, Jeff. Mm-hmm. If you are working at a sports station, you are working at the single greatest endorsement environment that's ever been invented. There's nothing better. And I'm not talking about in radio. I'm talking about there's nothing better in any media. A sports fan audience is the most engaged of all. You're forward leaning. I think I told you this. I was driving home last night from playing pickleball.
Yeah.
I got in the car, and there they are, the guys on the Dallas Cowboys station. They're ragging on my favorite coach over there. And I literally wanted to crawl into the radio and strangle this guy because he was an idiot. He didn't know
because he's hammering Kellen Moore, one of your favorite players of all time, former Boise State quarterback.
Exactly. He's trashing my boy.
Yeah.
But here's what happened was how easily I sat forward. I literally sat forward in my car and was like trying to touch the radio as if that person was right there next to me. And you know what? They were next to me, sitting in that seat. In essence, we were arguing about this. So stop and think about that environment. You have to cut through the clutter of a consumer's mind. Okay. It's very difficult to do because they're bombarded with messages more than ever. So how do you cut through? A, what's the environment? Are they listening? Are they actively engaged? Number two, is the person delivering the information credible? So stop and think. No matter how big your market is, no matter how small your market is, if you have a sports talk station, it's a little bit like, your audience is a little bit like an alumni association. They're there by choice. B, they're there because they love the concept of whatever this is. They love your team. Mm-hmm. They love your topics, but they're all there about sports. So that there's that fraternity that we all share, that passion we bring, and we come to listen. It's great to be, selling a smooth jazz station or a country station or, whatever. Music stations are fantastic. The problem is it's more background. Sports talk is foreground. Mm-hmm. Passion. Hey, it's football season. I'm listening, and I know now that the Cowboys are going to be the worst team in the history of the NFL this year because some guy dropped a pass today out at training camp. Remember this. Every single day, every talent on the air, whether they're a national talent, a local talent, a sidekick, the traffic reporter, whoever has a microphone that's open, hey, credibility out the gills. Number two, that audience, they build that audience every single day because you know what? Nobody's subscribing. Okay. So that audience chooses every single day to come. Okay, highly motivated. They're passionate about the topic. It doesn't matter if they love your take or hate your take. You're delivering the take. So think about that from an environment. Now, this guy last night who's talking to me about Kellen Moore's an idiot can literally turn around and tell me where to get a car lease. And you know what? He's got credibility with me.
Let me stop you here and transition over to one of the objections that we'll throw up and management has to deal with is the endorsement fee. And how to handle that negotiation with the guy on the air, how much he should get. Sometimes it's more than what the salesperson makes. The station looks at it and says, hey, you're taking an endorsement deal, that guy's getting paid. You're making a commission. If it's an agency, it's even more. And the net keeps going down. You were in charge of multiple markets. So is there a formula?
I wish there was a formula, but I don't believe there is. I'll give you an example. You get a call in from H&R Block, and they want to do endorsements for the tax season. So they're going to nationally come to market, and they're going to be on the air for 3.5, 4 months with you. Okay. So there's going to be an agency fee, and they're going to argue about the talent fee. But at the end of the day, they'll pay the talent fee. And then on April 15th, they're gone, and we'll see you next January. Correct?
Yep.
Okay. So that's a circumstance. All right. Here's another one. Same talent, local tax service, tax prep service. So we'll just call it Jeff Cave's tax guy.
Okay.
So Jeff can advertise. He's a huge fan. He can be on the air all year long. He can be a 10-year, a 20-year partner in this whole thing. So which one is going to pay the higher fee, so to speak? Everybody can make that decision for themselves. You might say, hey, I like the 4-month thing, and that's fine. You do that. But no, there's not a formula. But I will also say this. If anybody in your environment, whether that be a manager above you or whatever, talent, if the conversation is the talent's going to make more money than the salesperson, or the other way around, all I would say is, you're not going to be successful selling. I probably wouldn't go on this appointment if I were you, because you're completely in a tactical environment when what you've really got is a box of magic. So if you don't understand that, you've got to get over that, is what I'm saying. Both sides have to get over it. Because the truth is, if we don't go do this together, there is no talent fee, there is no commission, there's no agency fee to pay, and there's no net to come through the door. And we're going to go fight for spots and dots. And there's only one way to win that game, and that is to be cheap.
I want to run this in here because I think it's appropriate about not hitting and running in the endorsement world. If
oh my God,
the talent has credibility, it needs to be 6 months to a year contracts. And look, once he does this, we can't just be jumping around the next month and go and do the next tax guy, right?
Correct. Absolutely. And you've all heard this somewhere in your market. Talent comes on the air, and he's talking about the awesome guys over at the Ford dealer down the street there and how they're the greatest. And then something happens, then all of a sudden he's not talking about the Ford guy anymore. And then, 6 weeks later, now he's over there talking about the GMC dealer. Okay. He's just trashed his cred. The single most important piece of currency any content delivery person, DJ, whatever we call them, is that credibility. That's their gold. Mm-hmm. So we can't put them in a position to do that. Saying no to a crappy deal, Jeff, sometimes I realize it's hard. Every single day, our talent goes out and does the hardest job in the world. And that is they get people to come to their stadium, if you will. Mm-hmm. And those people have no financial vesting in this. Okay, they come because they like it, and they can leave anytime they want for any reason they want. There's nothing more fickle than a radio audience. Yet here these people are, and they've developed relationships with those people. Like I said in my car last night, that DJ might as well have been sitting next to me.
Sure,
because that's how I was consuming it. But my point becomes this: we can't do any transitory deals, wreck cred. Okay, so that credibility that the talent has is absolutely priceless. We want to guard it with our life. When you get a good endorsement partner, And Jeff, you at some point, I'm sure you tell your audience this, but you were on the air and you sold them yourself.
Oh yeah.
Of all things,
Oh yeah.
you know exactly the power of that long-term, that relationship that gets built with the client, because you're letting the client literally rent your credibility with your audience.
Yeah.
And there is, again, I don't care how big your market is or small, there's nobody on the air anywhere in any market that doesn't have a big enough audience to impact in a big way any customer in that market.
Let's jump over to these guys on the air.
Yes.
And women on the air increasingly, no matter what market size. And you dealt with a lot of different markets from Biloxi to New Orleans in your Mid-South region for iHeart. But you've got people on the air that you think should be selling spots.
Oh my gosh, the most powerful salesperson on your sports station is the talent.
Most powerful. Do you really think they should carry a list? Do you think they should be going out with salespeople? What's your model here?
In a perfect world, there should never be an endorsement meeting, especially as before the deal is done, sold, without the talent involved. Face-to-face is best, always. But sparing that, they got to be on a Zoom call with you. They've got to be on the phone as you are there. Jeff, you are a talent. You've been on lots and lots of sales calls in your day. The dynamic of when talent is sitting with a customer and a salesperson is sitting with a customer is utterly different. The salesperson is in the mind of the prospect. They're trying to figure out how to make you go away with the least possible pain to me, the prospect. When the talent shows up, it's totally different. Now I'm a fan. I'm talking about, in fact, when I talked to you before we went on to start this, we were yakking about the Broncos, right? And your opinions mattered to me. Okay. And so in that role, you're like, you're like a superstar to me in that role. So that's the dynamic. So we want the talent on the call whenever. Really, there's no point in doing it without them.
All right. Now let me move over to all the different salespeople, Mike, that you ran across. And I know that some of the basics, and we'll get to do you have a 2-minute exercise for us? Is that what you've got?
Yeah, I want to talk about the process, and it's really easy. I can get through it quickly for you.
All right.
You want me to do that now?
Well, hold on to that thought and just tell me about, because it may work in tandem, the best attributes that the best salespeople you were around had. What were their processes, or what were those things that stood out to you that made them the best salespeople in the iHearts and the Clear Channel world that you ran in for so long?
That'd be absolutely. And it took me a long time to figure this out because you're overwhelmed with so much kind of day-to-day noise. Here's what it is: consistent performance, meaning that they do the same things over and over and over again. The customer experiences a huge level of consistency when dealing with that salesperson. Number 2, coachability. We've got to be able to grow as we learn new things. We have to be able to take, parts of that, what we were doing consistently, and eliminate stuff that doesn't have as much leverage anymore, and add the new parts. Consistently execute the fundamentals of whatever the needs of that station, group, cluster, whatever, to be consistent and to be coachable to the future. I don't believe in the concept of naturally born salespeople. Some people just have a gift of gab. Those are all things that will leverage people who are consistent and coachable.
All right. Now get to your 2-minute process.
Process is this.
All right.
Most endorsement deals are done as one-offs. Everyone is a different, all of the parts and pieces are different. And my pitch is you've got to treat them all. It's like a business process. So how long is it going to take? How many calls is it going to take to get in front of clients? 6, 9 contacts, depending on how many, probably 3, 4 calls to get the deal to the closing line. Now it's closed. Here's where people make the mistake. This is when the selling begins. Every single week, the talent has to have personal contact with the customer. whether that's a text, an email, hey, calling you from the studio between bleds. You've got to touch that customer over and over and over again, because they're viewing this as I have a partnership. And if we view this as a transaction, this thing is going to crash. The renewal process begins literally halfway through whatever the term of the first contract is. Mm-hmm. We start talking about, hey, in 6 months from now, when this is up, here are the changes we can make. Here's the things we ought to do. So, and again, every single week, the customer should be touched by the talent. Last thought is, salespeople, check your ego at the door and become these people's agent.
The on-air person's agent. Yeah,
absolutely.
When
think about it from that perspective.
Guy. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. So they're what you're renting. Let them be front and center and do what they do so very well.
All right, Mike. So you have also sort of transitioned out of the business when the digital wave was coming, podcasting, and all the different tools in the box that sellers are required to have.
Correct.
So here we are in 2022. What do you think? What's your advice for the sports radio seller to be the best, no matter the size of the market, but you're mostly medium-sized markets to be the best?
Well, I think we covered it a little bit, but recognize the awesome, powerful, passionate tool you have. No other format does this as well as sports. They all do it. This is just like endorsement and credibility on steroids. Number two, we all have things to do, but kind of the rules are the same. Podcasting works because of that passionate environment. It works for advertisers for the exact reason we're talking about, the credibility. The audience who's come, they're part of that tribe. They're part of that alumni association. They're part of that team. They're in that stadium. Use whatever analogy you like. And number three is keep it simple. Just become utterly dependable. How often do we find ourselves, where a business has let us down with something very, very simple? The knife was dirty at the restaurant.
Sure.
Those are fundamental things that anybody can control. Those are those consistent steps that have to be taken. Become utterly dependable. Your customers want to know that I know this is how it's going to be when I do business with you. Perfection is not required.
Wow.
It's not.
Not a bad process. That's pretty good advice. And it's not too difficult. And yet I know everybody continues to strive for it. Good conversation, Mike. And
thanks, Steph.
I know that you're out there playing pickleball. You're out there. Also, are you not still umpiring college tennis matches?
I am. And I'm here to tell you, that is the most humbling thing I do in a day.
Out. In.
Oh my God. Yes. But watching all these fantastic young athletes and wishing perhaps that I hadn't wasted some of that, that younger body, because I promise you, nothing's going to get better as you get older. When you get my age, Jeff, your hips are going to hurt.
Are you chair umpire or line guy, or what you're up in the chair?
I do both, but mostly chair. I'm a chair umpire.
Very quickly, what would you do with Kyrgios? Nick Kyrgios, what would you do when he started berating and distracting?
Well, I know what I'd like to say is those are what are called code violations. And were he playing college tennis, he would have been thrown out of the match would have been over, and he would have been disqualified. Okay. What would I have done? I'd have probably done what those guys did, because he's the talent.
He's the
People
show.
didn't tune in to watch the umpire make a call. They turned in to watch him play. So knowing your audience matters. And you know what? What a good way to go out, because think about if he was your talent, because a lot of talent has kind of that wild personality.
No question.
It makes them what they are.
All right. Thanks to Mike Scott. Hey, rate, review it, pass it along. Pass on this pad. You can write me at jeffks54@gmail.com. Topics. If you have great conversations like what we just had with Mike, you'd like us to have, just reach out to me. If you're near Flower Mound or Dallas, reach out to me. We can get together, however that works out. Check out my articles on sports radio sales at Barrett Sports Media. .com. This week, it's all about handling the ratings release. Talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to Seller to Seller with Jeff Caves. Each episode is available on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, the iHeart app, and most podcasting platforms. To stay in touch with Jeff, follow him on Twitter @JeffCaves and read his sales columns on BarrettSportsMedia.com.